Roger Federer's unbeaten 2018 has come to an end, though it took an epic effort from Juan Martín del Potro to beat him in the Indian Wells final. Youth has served on the women's side as a pair of 20-year-olds reached the final there. We'll discuss their staying power. Serena Williams' comeback tournament lasted 3 matches before her sister got in the way. We'll assess. And we'll preview the Miami Open as one marquee event leads straight into another. Prime Sports Tennis with Andrea Leand starts now. Greetings. It's Tuesday, March 20th, 2018, and thanks for tuning in to Prime Sports Tennis. I'm Jeff Shane, typically heard talking golf on this outlet, but we're going to tinker with the order of play a bit as we transition to the second half of the Sunshine Double. Of course, my role is mostly just to hit lobs to Andrea Leand, our Prime Sports Network tennis expert and former top 15 player, has arrived in South Florida for the week and is hopefully enjoying a little bit of that tropical sunshine. Welcome as always, Andrea.
Well, thanks, Jeff, and thanks for coming on board for the tennis. And yes, flew into Miami last night, was out there early. I've seen the players since 6 a.m. actually on court. It is kind of warm here. The humidity is out, but the players are loving it. They're doing all kinds of things like Kids Day and going to the beach. And, of course, Serena Williams joined the groundbreaking ceremony yesterday at the Miami Dolphins Stadium because that will be the new site next year when the tournament, this one, Miami Open, moves sites from Key Biscayne. So lots going on, lots of excitement, and a lot of people, Jeff, still talking about Indian Wells.
Yes, absolutely, and we'll definitely get into the whole final year at Key Biscayne when we delve into the Miami Open. But let's go ahead and take a look back at an eventful week at the BNP Paribas Open out at Indian Wells, and an epic final between Roger Federer, who wound up suffering his first loss of 2018, and it went the distance against Del Potro.
Well, it was very exciting. Of course, Roger now dropping to 17-1 on the year. Can you imagine that record? 17-1, was undefeated coming into Indian Wells. Rafa pulled out, Corey pulled out, Nick Kyrgios pulled out. And we didn't see Sasha Zverev, but that next-gen group really posts very well on the court. But it was all about Roger, quite frankly, Jeff. It was about Roger getting through this, trying to defend the points, try to find that cushion at number 1 in the world now, which he did. He got to the finals, as you mentioned, got through George in that semifinal, which was a very tough match for Roger. Really had to come back from behind, did not play his best tennis, had to play a very early match at 11 a.m. They posted him because of the TV, and they're on the Pacific Coast. But the final, Jeff, against Juan Martín del Potro was really quite something, really astounding to see. Mostly, look, you got to give Juan Martín credit. This is a guy who won the U.S. Open, who beat Roger last year at the U.S. Open when Roger himself said he didn't play his best because he really didn't feel he was ready to play Rafa in the next round. And, just whimpered out of that match, which is very unusual, obviously, for Roger of his standard. But, I always believe that that's always something that comes back into play. And when you give an opponent confidence that you can beat them, they always take that. And with Juan Martín del Potro, there's just too much experience. As he now says, he's healthy. He's not playing with an injury for the first time in years. The 4 wrist surgeries behind him, and he feels 100% healthy. Coming into a streak himself by winning Acapulco the week before. And it was really about Del Potro in this match as far as who had the bigger shots. He had the bigger forehand, he had the more consistent serve, and he executed and raised his level on the bigger points better than Roger, including that third set breaker. But, Jeff, the big question was Ivan Ljubicic's coach not there on a skiing vacation. Roger really doesn't play as many events as the quality of win, as we've mentioned. He doesn't play the same events as the other players. You would think when you're going into a Masters 1000, you want your full team. And I know that Ivan does not travel with him all the time. He started his management company. He's managing George, actually. And so there are obviously a lot going on. But I think that extra set of eyes may have helped Roger because I think in that final, the strategy was a little bit cloudy. He played that Del Potro forehand to me a little bit too much, including at 3-2, 40-15 for Roger in that third set. Went to the Del Potro forehand twice and lost the 2 chances to break right there at 3-2. And to me, it just kind of reflected the fact that this was not Roger's best match tactically or really stroke production-wise. The backhand return of serve really struggled with that, and also struggled with his first serve percentage.
And I think when we talk about Roger, and I suppose with Rafa to a certain extent, we expect so much out of those guys that when they are just a little off, it kind of makes us wonder more about them being a little off than it would be for somebody else in the draw.
Oh, absolutely. And we remember, Rafa, of course, is out for both of these two, Indian Wells and Miami. Had the same sort of hip area injury that he had the Australian, not the exact same, but he will probably come back at Davis Cup, he says. But you're right. I mean, it's, who are we to say to Roger, second guess Roger's strategy or second guess the way Roger's approached the match, because he has set the standard. He has, quite frankly, elevated the game on and off court. So we can't second guess him. We can just, with observation, say, why did he lose this time perhaps? Why was this different? I thought the first signal was that he did not shave. Whenever he doesn't shave, like at the Canadian Open last year, he never wins a tournament. At least he did not get injured as he did at the Canadian, where he lost to Sasha Zverev with the back injury, which cost him the rest of the year. But no, he came in there to me a little bit not as sharp as he usually is. And when we can see that sharpness in this game, it's off the service return, off the serve, because he likes to start the points well. His first serve percentage was down to 63% against Del Potro, and Del Potro was able to win 67% of the points on his second serve, which meant that Roger was really not putting any pressure on it, primarily because that backhand was not working. So to me, there are a lot of elements out there, Greg. As we mentioned, he had to play at 11 a.m. He had to play in the night matches. There was wind. There was sun. There was all kinds of things you have to deal with. And that's where, yes, he did have Lutti with him and Paganini, I think, with him. But you do need that extra set of eyes, I think, with the coach, because Del Potro is such an intangible player, Jeff. You can't really size him up on paper, because his forte is really able to, as one of the best competitors on tour, able to raise his level on those big points.
Yeah, and that's exactly, kind of segues into what I was going to bring up next. Is this was kind of a classic Del Potro match in which he had to battle. He had to save 3 match points, I believe it was, in that second set. Got himself to pull that set out and then set up for just an epic third set.
Yeah, I mean, he really is such an interesting person to me, because, of course, he dedicated this win, by the way, to his dog, Caesar, who just passed away, 10 years old. And this is the sentiment, though, with Del Potro. He plays so much on emotion, and he did get upset during that final because of the pro-Roger crowd and really got on the umpire about it. Then Roger got on the umpire about it. But Del Potro really feeds off a crowd, and boy, he's going to love it down at the Miami Open with the South American contingent down there. But he likes that support. He liked winning in Acapulco, and he is someone that really takes that emotion and knows how to channel it into such positive ways to raise his level. So, yeah, on paper, he doesn't. The backhand is weak. The mobility, of course, which Roger never really exploited by really grooving that forehand side of Del Potro's. It was never an issue for him, because he was able, even on slow courts, to dictate the play.
How does this kind of set Del Potro up for the year to come?
Oh, I think, now, of course, he goes to number 6 in the world. I think he'll get to number 3. You still have Roger and Rafa with a big cushion there in the top 2. But I suspect that Juan Martín will get to at least number 3 in the world. And you know what? This is because the guy posts 150%. I was at some of these events, and I watch him train in the off court. And this is someone who is so disciplined, Jeff. I mean, we talk about Sasha Zverev, who split with Ferrero because Ferrero said he wasn't disciplined enough, showed up late to practice, didn't really take things as professionally as he felt that he needed to. And we see Kyrgios, of course, who's been off for a month, is supposed to come back here at the Miami Open, did go with Roger to Chicago yesterday to do a promotion for the Labor Cup, so we're hoping to see him back. But when you see a lot of these 20-something-year-old guys, Jack Sock included, quite frankly, having trouble in this, trouble really playing 100% every time they walk out there, that's why Juan Martín Del Potro is number 6 and will probably move up, because he has that experience. And after almost really losing his chance to have a career with all these injuries, really savors it all now and really wants it. And even though he doesn't have the mobility and he doesn't really have the best backhand and he has big weaknesses, he is able to really have the discipline and the fortitude and the physical fitness as best he can to really post every time he walks out.
Okay, and the other story coming out of the men's draw was or a player to keep an eye on was Novak Djokovic. In his return, it was cut short to Taro Daniel very early on. What did you see in his form, and where does he go from here?
Well, it's been a tough one, Jeff, because, everyone was expecting Novak to come back, and they had high expectations of his play. He had, and it's been a very kind of mysterious, elbow or arm procedure, in that forearm about 6 weeks ago over in Europe, and he had it all bandaged, and people said it was a surgical procedure. Now, he does say now it was a surgical procedure. Some said he then called it an intervention or something of sort. So we don't really know what is going on with this arm. The bottom line is, as you mentioned, he came back out. He looked fine for the first set and a half, and then it just all fell apart, unraveled. And the errors, the lack of balance on court for a guy who usually moves so well and is always on balance and so technically good, we just saw the balance go, the movement go, and the confidence. And that, to me, is what it's all about, Jeff, with Novak, is confidence. He had Andre there, Andre Agassi, had Roddick there with him, his day-to-day guy, Stepanek. And so he has a team. He has all the external cues around him. But now it's really for him to find, I think, within. And that's always been the difficulty with Novak, is to find the confidence within instead of from the Japanese mental program or all the other various different things, the hyperbaric chamber that he did to try and get in his best physical shape. And as he himself says, he doesn't have confidence in his fitness right now. And to me, he looks good. He looks stronger. And we know he's doing some work. He did go to L.A. after Indian Wells. He is in Miami now. He is posted there. He does have a interesting draw in that Del Potro part with Kei Nishikori there as well. But I think really it's about him going out there and taking the losses and just not liking it and keep going back and working and working and working. And it's about working and just there's no shortcuts for Novak. I think that's what he has to understand. There are no shortcuts. You got to do the work. You got to build yourself up physically. And I think once he gets out there and really takes some losses and realizes what he needs to do, I think he will respond in a positive way. But it's going to be a process, I think, and I hope he's willing to go through it.
Yeah, don't we always say it's a process, no matter what sport. So, and it's Novak's turn to go through that again. Over on the women's side, we saw a pair of 20-year-olds kind of steal the show with Naomi Osaka beating Daria Kasatkina in straight sets in the final. And they had to go through some big names to actually get there. So a solid fortnight for both of them.
Oh, yeah. It was really fantastic to see this. And they're 20-year-olds. So we're going to call them the 20-year-old group because we're going to differentiate from the 20-something group of Sloane, Madison, Muguruza, Pliskova, and those girls in their mid-20s. Because I think, Jeff, that this 20-year-old group is really going to be the generation we're going to wrap our arms around. They really want it, Jeff. They really, really want it. And actually, as fate would happen, in the off-season, in December, before they went to Australia, I was at the Everett Academy where I watched them every day practice side by side. And Dasha was hitting with Monica Puig, and of course, Naomi Osaka was with her new coach, Sasha Bajan. And they practiced, and they were feeding off each other a little bit. They're all friendly, as we know. They're all, very friendly. I'm not going to say good friends because they're competitors too, but you could see how they would feed off the energy. And that's why these academies, like the Everett Academy especially, are so fantastic because they allow for this when you train. When you have your own contemporaries beside you, it really pushes you to play your best. And I think that does help. Look, as you said, they went through everyone. Of course, Dasha went through all four of our reigning Grand Slam champions this year. She's gone through Muguruza. She beat Sloane in Indian Wells. And she also has beaten Halep as well. So she's beaten all of them, and she had to beat the top names as well to get to the final. Naomi as well, beating just a slew of all the top names. And the question I'm getting from Facebook fans that we have is why? Why all of a sudden, what are they doing differently? Well, they have new coaches, Jeff. They both have new coaches. Dasha, Philippe is just wonderful, been terrific for her. He has really opened up her world to how to win matches with all her different mixed pace shots and her versatility and her variety. He's really starting to hone her in on what you need to do in a match and tactics to apply yourself to actually come out with the win. And I think that's really helped. I think the biggest thing for both women has been fitness. Neither has been known as a great mover in the best condition. And I think that both Naomi and Dasha have improved their fitness. And for Naomi, it's really helped her, Jeff, be patient on court. You know when you're fit. As Andre Agassi used to say, I always get smarter when I get fitter. And I think as Naomi is getting fitter, she's able to feel like she has the confidence to stay in the point longer. She doesn't have to go for the winner off the bat. She can wait for the right shot, wait till she's in position, and wear down her opponent. And we saw that at Indian Wells the entire week. She was able to wear the opponent down, whether it was Sharapova, as she had to play in the first round, or of course later with Dasha, she was able to just stay in there and show better fitness and better maturity.
Again, kind of like we talked about with Del Potro. Now, these are obviously younger players, but how much of them now do you think we're going to see, not only, this next 10 days, 10, 12 days in Miami, but we're setting up for the major season? Are these two more names that we need to look at?
Well, I think this is the generation we need to look at because they really want it, and they're willing to put in the work. They enjoy the process. Here we go back to process. They love working out. They love, it's not always easy. I mean, I remember seeing Dasha during every one of her training sessions on the sidelines with the neck tweaking and needed this and needed that because she's a little bit physically, to me, a little bit more fragile, and it's about strengthening her whole body that is so key for her to prevent her from injury. Naomi's a lot stronger physically by stature, but I think this is the group. People have said what happened to Madison Keys. Of course, she lost very early to Danielle Collins, a collegiate player, and Sloane Stephens obviously beat Vika Azarenka, who was back for the first time in almost a year with this horrible custody battle, Jeff, going on. And it seems like it's working its way out a little bit, and Vika did win her first round over Heather, but then lost to Sloane pretty decisively, does not have the physicality anymore, and clearly troubled with that serve. But, you look at the Sloanes and the Madisons and the Muguruthas who, Muguruza's been number one in the world, and you don't see them enjoying the process day in, day out. And they post on certain occasions, and when they do, there's nothing better. They are phenomenal, but they're not doing it on a day-to-day regular basis. So this is where they have a maturation progress to work through, whereas we see these young ones like Dasha and Naomi already there to seize the moment.
Got it. Of course, the big anticipation at Indian Wells to see the tournament return of Serena Williams. She did get in 3 matches before losing to Venus in the round of 32. What did you see in her for her return, and how long is her path?
Did you see baby Olympia? I mean, when you look at this baby, who was on all the billboards, by the way, because husband Alexis put all the billboards into Indian Wells with, greatest mother of all time, GMOAT. And when you have such a cute little baby, it's hard to say, I got to go practice. But Serena is really toughing it out. I mean, she is finding the balance now. We have to remember, Jeff, it was about a month ago in Asheville at the Fed Cup. She was on a breast pump in the locker room. Okay, so that's where we were at in Asheville. She was still nursing, and she still is, and at least she was last week. And this is someone who has had to talk about processes, talk about having to come back from such incredible, as a life-threatening delivery. So you have to give Serena credit and know that this is going to be a process. She herself has said it's going to be gradual. It's going to take a while. She's, tweeting out. She has a private chef, but she's tweeting out, I'm hungry. I want that fried rice. I want this and that. So a lot of discipline is going to be required of Serena. And at this stage, 36 years old, it's a lot to ask. But you know what? I give her so much credit, Jeff. She is really, she's biting the bullet. She's getting tough, and this is something she wants. And I just saw her play, hit down here in Miami, and she's getting better. She strikes the ball well. She lost to Sister Venus in the third round, but it was great to see her win those first 2 matches on sheer will. And that will is still there. That drive is still there. And again, this is what we're seeing in our 20-something, our 20-year-olds, not in the 20-something ones, but in the Dashas and the Naomis. Serena is their role model. So she's really presented this picture of being able to bear down and realize that this is not going to be overnight as it usually is for her, and she's going to have to work her way and play her way into shape because she doesn't like to train. She doesn't really like to practice off court. She'd prefer to be in the matches, in the tournament atmosphere where she can feed off that energy and really motivate herself to get better.
Yeah, and will, as we know, in many sports is a good chunk of the battle. One of the controversies from Indian Wells, we see it again here in Miami, is that she is not seeded. 14-month layoff. I don't know exactly how those rules for layoffs and maternity leave go, but should she have been seeded? In a way, she got an extra match out of it.
Yeah, to me, there's been a lot of conversation. And the idealistic, the easy answer is, oh, yes, the WTA has to allow, women leaving for maternity. They have to lead the way. They're the premier women's sport in the world. They have to lead the way in allowing those women who come back from maternity to have not only a protected ranking to get back into the events, but a protected seeding so that they are then seated in these events. For instance, a lot of people felt that Serena Williams should be seated. She should not have to face for instance, Osaka, which has been the draw here in Miami, in the Miami Open. And, there's a lot more that goes into it, Jeff, and I've done the homework. I did the backstory. It actually was the players that did not approve of giving a protected seating for a player coming back from maternity. And, yes, in other professions, they do protect the rank and they give you a 3-month maternity leave. But this has been over a year, 14 months that Serena was off for obvious reasons that have been already talked about. And so when you look at the length of time and also what the seeding really means in a draw, players are seeded to produce a balanced draw. And it's really to reflect the merit of the results and really the level of their play. Is it really fair to expect a player coming back from maternity over a year old, since they have been on tour, to really have that level of play, to really, someone who should be seeded in the draw? And you could have an unbalanced draw if you start seeding these players who really are not at that level yet and are really working their way back, like Serena and Vika. So it's not just Serena, but of course she's the one who's attracted the attention because everyone's very upset the Miami Open she's drawn Naomi in the first round. But as you just mentioned, Jeff, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing because, as you said, it gives her the matches. And had she been seeded, then she would have gotten a bye, but then she could have faced Naomi again. So, it really doesn't solve the issue as far as the actual draw if they're not at that caliber yet. Having said that, when they did bring this up to the players, Jeff, it was at the time on the heels of Maria Sharapova's return. It was also lumped in with injuries, and so the players were told to vote on injuries and maternity leave as one, and they really don't believe that players who are injured, really deserve a protected seating. So now it will be reviewed. I'm sure the WTA is going to come up with the maternity rule now, which I personally agree with. I do believe they deserve a protected seating just for the name value. And I am sure that we will see women now on the tour coming back from maternity leave, with seedings. But it will probably be too late for Serena because I'm sure with the way she's going and the determination she has, she'll already have her ranking back.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, too. Touching real quickly, you mentioned Vika Azarenka, her comeback and dealing with her custody battle, which has kind of limited her travel. And her ability to play. And then also Maria Sharapova also had a very short stay at Indian Wells.
And Maria's pulled out of the Miami Open. She, as we mentioned, lost to Naomi in the first round, did not look good physically. This is all about the physicality with Maria. There was some question about whether she was really going to even play Indian Wells. She did split with her coach, Sven Grönveld, right after that. And to me, it is all about the physicality now for Maria. She's well past 30 years of age. Of course, she's not taking the Meldonian, and that's been pointed out. So there are a lot of questions about it. I just hope Maria is able to fade away from the sport on a high note because she deserves that. She's given the sport a lot, and she deserves a lot back. But I also hope that, we don't want to see her stick around and take some more of these types of losses, which she has in the last 6 months, that really don't reflect her career. So I hope she makes the wise decisions. But Vika is all full force. So as you mentioned, she was off with this horrible custody battle, prevented her from coming back after the pregnancy last year, played Wimbledon, played the tune-up to that, and that was about it. And it's been in this custody battle, which seems to be softening, Jeff, but it's still an issue. She is at the Miami Open. She has CC Bellis in the first round, but it's a tough draw. The winner, I think, to play Madison Keys. And so we'll have to see how Vika does. She is not the same Vika. She is, lost quite a bit of weight. She doesn't have that physicality, which is what really drove her game, that, raw fitness and a relentless attacking style. And so we'll have to see also what she does with her serve. And she still has a team that she's put together out in California, because that's, quite frankly, the only state she's been able to stay in. She's not been able to leave that state because of this custody battle. But she has Leo here in Miami. Leo's father is also accompanying them. So they're trying to work it out, and she's just such a great personality and spirit for the game, Jeff, that I hope she does, because she's also someone who has that raw instinct and desire to win, and that's what we like to see, in the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as we turn our attention to the Miami Open, and I guess we touched on it with the groundbreaking ceremony up at Hard Rock Stadium, Dolphin Stadium, but this is the last edition on Key Biscayne. Does that make it a little bit of a bittersweet edition for this?
Very
Miami?
Nostalgic, yes, absolutely. This has been a great home for the tournament for so many years. It's so beautiful, and you have spring break, and the kids are out, and the families are going there, and it's up against the water, and you have the beautiful weather all the time. But, things have to change, and they don't, as we say, it's the Miami Open. They're looking for more sponsorship. They're looking to expand it. They're looking to make it as big as Indian Wells now, which has set the standard. And by the way, of course, the BNP Paribas Open, awarded by both tours, event of the year on the tour, the best event in professional tennis. And so now, of course, Miami Open, which is owned now by Stephen Ross, the Miami Dolphins owner, and IMG, are trying to match up the ante as well. So they want to make this a top event, especially in the United States, and we need them to. We need to drive that U.S. market. We need to really secure that market, and no better place than Miami, which has such a great sophisticated crowd, and no better, of course, in spring break time. So you have the fans who want it, and so now it's going to be very nostalgic this year, of course, to see this at the last as the last one on Key Biscayne at Crandon Park. But it's okay. I think the players are definitely ready for a change. Things serve their time, and then it's time to move on and make things better. As we'll talk about the Davis Cup proposal also that's floated out there. And it's hard to, it's hard when you have history and tradition that has been so important, but it's also important to reinvent and move on to make it even better.
Yeah, as we've seen in golf and some long-time tournaments that have had to go, and courses that have had to go by the wayside. The good news is that the tournament is staying in South Florida. I know there was talk about moving it to Orlando or perhaps other places at some point. So the good news is that it's still going to be the Miami Open. What do you see in the draws? We've touched on Serena and Osaka. Welcome back, Serena. For one early match, Azarenka and CC Bellis. What else are you seeing in the draw?
I really think those are the two key parts of that draw. The draws are pretty well balanced. You have a lot of buys. You have 32 buys in there, and so all the seeds get a bye. You have a number of qualifiers, which are going on again today, 2 rounds of qualifying, so we'll have a bunch of qualifiers. And, of course, you have the wild cards, but Anisimova is someone we want to watch. She did so well. Amanda did so well last week, Indian Wells, and a real breakthrough moment for her. And I think we're seeing a lot of these younger girls, these teenagers, also start to really want to seize the moment. So that's what we're going to be looking for down here at the Miami Open. In the men's draw, I think it's all about Roger, Jeff. I mean, it really has to be. Can he rebound from this, somewhat disappointing loss? As Roger said today, I don't know what in the world happened in that third set tiebreaker. 2 double faults and all the errors. We haven't seen that from Roger in a long time. So now I think he has a little bit of something to prove. And this is just what Roger, I think, needed, was a little push, saying, you know what, it's nice now we have someone in some ways that beat Roger and said, you know what, Roger, you can't get away with a subpar standard. You have to play your best tennis to win this. And so I think we'll see a sharper Roger, but I think we're also going to see a tougher draw for him. And, of course, you know, the elements are already down here, very, very different, as Roger himself says, from Indian Wells. It's the humidity, the heat. We'll have some rain. We'll have, you know, lots of different variables here. And so it'll be interesting to see how, again, the players deal with the humidity and the heat. We remember Muguruza last year not able to finish her match against Wozniacki. We are expecting to see something more from Caroline Wozniacki, the second seed. Halep, of course, comes in as the top seed. They haven't been able really to stay true to their seedings in the last couple of events. So we'll have to see if they really can play their best tennis, and if the top seeds can really post this time in the women's draw. But I think for the men, it's about, can Sasha Zverev, who has a lot of points to defend, play better tennis? Can he find that discipline and professionalism? And Kyrgios, who is flying in with Roger right now as we speak from the Labor Cup in Chicago, from that promotional appearance, we're going to have to see if that really helps him and ignite his his career, his tennis this year, because we haven't really gotten to see a lot of Nick. And those were the exciting personalities last year, quite frankly, Jeff. You remember Nick playing Roger in what I thought was one of the best matches of the year, if not the best, and losing in a breaker. So a lot of excitement, and I think it's just the whole ambiance of the entire Miami area that comes into play too. It's like a big party out there.
Yeah, as Miami is, we both know that. Particularly from my years being down in South Florida as well. Does Roger take the title here, and who do you like on the women's side before we hit a shot?
Well, I would be surprised if Roger doesn't raise his level at this stage. I think he doesn't take losses well. He has a break, and we're not hearing that he's going to play the clay. There's been no decision on that. So after this, he feasibly could have a break until the grass. So that's quite, a good couple of months. So I would have to think he's going to give it his all here. As far as the women are concerned, Halep, Wozniacki, looking forward to the clay. Wozniacki did get to the final. She has Jo Konta in her part, who was the winner, the defending champion of this event. So they're all in the same part of that draw, but Jo Konta has struggled this year. So I think to me it's about whether the seeds can really find their form, the form that they've really struggled to find this year. Whereas when you have all these young personalities and like the Anissimovas and the Dashas and the Naomis coming up who really want it and now believe they can beat these top girls. And so when that belief comes through and they start posting, then you're going to have a real battle, because I think they also see the game is changing, that new things are being embraced, and no better off court than on court now as well. And we talked about it. There's lots of things going off court, Jeff, especially with that Davis Cup, especially with a lot of the real long-term history and traditions we've seen in the game.
Yeah, and we've touched on it here a couple of times. In the final topic for this edition, the Davis Cup proposal. What's ahead, and is it now starting to get a little bit of pushback?
Well, it's very exciting, to see something new come. I mean, Dave Haggerty, the head of the ITF, ran on this proposal basically because he felt that Davis Cup needed to have an infusion of excitement. It needed to be expanded. It needed to be reinvented to some degree because it just wasn't working. The model had broken. And he's come in with $3 billion. $3 billion from Cosmos sponsor. And that is money, Jeff, that will go to helping all levels of the game, from the grassroots to the pros. It helps that ITF circuit where the young players find their way onto the pros. They can work their way in. And so I can't tell you or emphasize enough the importance of the financial aspect of this, because it also goes to the federations and to the various countries that don't have any money to support the sport in any way in their country. So there's a lot of benefits when you have $3 billion. And as you mentioned, it's a one-week event they're proposing. It's a number of teams all coming together like a World Cup event in 1 week, and they're proposing doing it at the end of the year. And it's I think that the current players have all supported it. Rafa supported it. Novak has supported it because they understand there needs to be a change. The ATP has responded by saying, well, we're going to have our own 1 week event. We're going to do it in Brisbane. We're going to do it, day zero, the first week of the year. And this is something we've been looking at too. But to me, my question is, does the ATP bring in billions of dollars infused into the game to help the game at all levels? And, is this just another one-week exhibition where when the guys could not post already in the beginning of the year, the top guys, why would they do it now? And so I think there's a lot more questions to be asked about the ATP event. But I think as far as Dave Haggerty and the ITF and reinventing Davis Cup, you're always going to have the former champions who have the memories, who have the tradition. They're going to be tough to want to see something new. But I think that the time has come. As you see a lot of new faces and you see the game changing, you have to really grasp the fact that the sport has to move with it, as well as Davis Cup.
Yeah, and we'll definitely keep tabs on that. The 1 week tournament, or however you want to phrase it.
The World Cup
certainly will make for a huge week.
And you know what? They're already, look, I'm sure Larry Ellison is already trying to put his hat in the ring, to get it when it comes to the United States and put it out at Indian Wells, because that would be a great venue for the U.S. turn. And, everywhere around the world will get a turn with the Davis Cup, and I think it will create more exposure. And now, tennis has become such a television sport as well, and, such a huge fan base. You can really reach a lot more people, I think, by having it in 1 week.
Absolutely.
With all the top names there.
Yeah, it's a target, and sometimes the biggest problem with these year-long things is you have a competition week, and then it's 2 months before the next one, and the excitement dies off, and you deal with injuries, and you deal with form, and at least in a 1 week situation, everybody is trying to peak at the right time, so you get consistency of form. So
you had to get the top players playing again. You had to get the top players involved. Of course, Davis Cup as it is now, it's 4 rounds. The top players just cannot give 4 weeks a year to that, and we're not posting. And so when you don't have your top names, it's hard to get the fans. Now, of course, the U.S. will go into Nashville in the beginning of April 8th, and they are posting. All their top guys are going to be there. Isner, Stock, Query, Johnson, apparently. So that's exciting. And I really think, Jeff, that this could be the year for the U.S. Davis Cup to take that title. When you start in Serbia and you do the tough part in Serbia, which is not an easy tie for those guys to win, and then really, pay your dues. I think that pays off in the end. So they're going to play Belgium. David Goffin has said he is not playing, so it obviously should be that U.S. should be the favorites there. But I'm excited to see it because I think Davis Cup is a great event, and I'm even more excited to see that it might become a much more popular, much more updated version.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll certainly be talking about Davis Cup as we move into April and get ready for the next phase of the season. But always appreciate good information, Andrea, and taking a look both back at Indian Wells and ahead to the Miami Open. For those listening that want to follow Andrea on Twitter, her handle is ACLeand, ACLEAND, and follow that with a number 10 on Twitter. Andrea, you're going to be in South Florida for the entire Miami Open?
Yeah, no, I'm here for the whole Miami Open, and then I'll be going to Charleston after that to the WTA event. And also, I'm taking your questions off of Twitter. A lot of the information we give in these shows is based on the questions I'm getting and the comments I'm getting on Facebook and Twitter. So, yeah, let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what your questions are, and I will definitely do the homework for you because it's been fun. I've just been on Twitter for not very long, a couple months, but I'm really enjoying the feedback. So. I'm going to be there the entire 10 days, and I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, definitely. The two-way conversation is definitely interesting on Twitter. So anyway, thank you, Andrea, and that will do it for this edition of Prime Sports Tennis. Please check out all of our on-demand shows following each live broadcast. You'll find them at primesportsnetwork.com or on our iTunes and YouTube pages under Prime Sports Network. You can also follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN and receive all of our up-to-date news, opinions, and promotional announcements. And, of course, catch us next time as we analyze the Miami Open and other tennis headlines, including looking ahead to the Davis Cup, right here on Prime Sports Tennis with Andrea Leand. This is Prime Sports Network.
should never be afraid to die.